Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. Last week we left off in northern Chesapeake Bay. We had made it all the way up to Road River where we stayed for a few days. This week we're going to go ahead and make a short trip through the Bainbridge and up to Deep Creek where we hadn't been for a few years, so it was nice to get back and check it out. From there we make a long run all the way up through the northern bay and we make it to Bohemia River where we stay for one night. The next day is just a quick trip through the C&D Canal to get back to our home base of Delaware City. I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. We did spend a few days in Road River, and on the second day the Coast Guard started putting out alerts that there was a newly grounded and abandoned sailboat in Road River, which is mildly concerning and kind of an oddity, so I decided to fly the drone and check it out. Now, I couldn't get down too close to the sailboat. There was a stand of trees between us and the drone and between the other boat, and I kept losing reception on the drone, and I didn't want to lose the drone, so I didn't get too close to it. But it is really concerning. You know, the Coast Guard said it was newly abandoned and grounded, but the boat looks to be in really, really great shape, which is like, why? I don't know. It's very, very puzzling. I mean, there could be a million reasons why you do, but the thing that I really wonder is there are so many solo sailors out there, and a lot of us don't have a ton of family. So, like, if a boat's abandoned and grounded, do the police or the Coast Guard, do they check it out just to make sure there's no one inside that, you know, is having a medical emergency or is dead? I mean, it's really kind of weird how, you know, and there are tons of abandoned boats, and they've got to be abandoned at some point, so there's a nexus point where they get abandoned, you know, and it was weird to be there when that happened, and for the boat to be in such good shape too. I mean, there are solar panels on it, and, you know, with the head sail coming unfurled, that's kind of concerning, you know. You'd think it would take some time for that to start happening, so I don't know how long it had been there. And, you know, it does bring up the safety standpoint, because, you know, I'm not super old. I don't know, somewhere around 48. But, you know, if I had a medical emergency, I don't care about me. I'm more worried about the crew, what would happen to the crew. And so I've got my mom, and she's in a very similar situation. You know, she's upper 60s, and we talk, you know, on the phone every day for about 10 minutes just to make sure that we're both okay, and that more importantly, that our dogs are okay. She's got 3 dogs. I have 3 dogs. So, you know, we're looking out for each other's dogs, you know, but eventually, you know, someday she's not going to be here anymore. And then it really makes you wonder. I mean, I don't know. I'll have to figure out something else, some other way of checking in with someone just to make sure if you know, I mean, we're all ticking time bombs. We could go at any time. It's not even really about whether you're super healthy or not. It's just, you know, an aneurysm could pop in your brain and you're dead. You know, a lot of people go to sleep at night and never wake up. So it's kind of scary. Not, like I said, I'm not concerned about myself, but, you know, if the crew is locked in the boat and there's, I mean, no one to check in on them, you know, it is kind of a scary situation. So how do you guys manage it? Especially for you guys who are solo sailors, you know, I used to text my mom my anchor position every night. I've gotten kind of lax on that. I haven't done that. I didn't do that at all last year. I really should start doing that again, just in case if I don't answer the phone, she can at least contact the Coast Guard and she'll know my position. You know, AIS, it doesn't always pick you up. There are vast stretches, you know, going through the Pungo River, Alligator River Canal, all through Alligator River. Typically, AIS doesn't pick you up. So there are blind spots to AIS, especially inland. And, you know, it is kind of scary because something could happen. And so how do you guys manage it? Do you check in with someone? I mean, do you have like a webcam in your boat that you're streaming? So if you're non-responsive or if something happens, someone knows? I mean, how do you guys handle that? Because it's kind of a scary situation, really. Where we typically anchor in Road River is exposed to winds out of the northeast. So if the winds are blowing out of the northeast, it will come right down the bay and you'll have big waves and it'll be very uncomfortable. Up until that point, the wind had been coming out of the southwest, so we were very well protected and it was very calm where we were, but that was about to change. So we had two options. We could either go up to Deep Creek, which is just off of Magothie River, which is just north of the Bainbridge, or we could go further back into Road River to, shelter from the coming winds. We decided to go ahead. It wasn't going to be too windy out there. It was going to be a little choppy, but nothing too drastic, and we could use the wind for, about half the day to get where we were going. And, we hadn't been to Deep Creek for a couple of years, so I thought, let's go ahead and check it out. So once we were pulling into Deep Creek, and it really should be called Shallow Creek. I think where we anchor, it's typically only about 7 feet deep. There's really only room for one boat back in there, but this time there were two already there. Now, one was a shallow draft, so they were back in further than what we could reach, and the other was a catamaran. And they were on the edge of the area where we could safely anchor. Now, if this had been a few years earlier, I wouldn't have even attempted to anchor there. And it is shallow on the approach getting into Deep Creek. But I knew there would be just enough room if we put out a 4-to-1, 5-to-1 scope, in 7 feet, even, you're putting out 35 feet of chain, so it's really not much. And then EJ is 35 feet long, so you only need a 70-foot, 140 feet circle to swing in, which is very small. So we had just enough room to get in there, and it's so nice back in there. It's calm. You're very sheltered from the wind. So it's it's kind of a neat place to go into. It's just very tight. It's one of the tighter spots that we anchor, and yeah, it was a very nice night, so I'm glad we went back in there. And we actually saw dolphins when we were going back in there. That's the furthest north in the bay that I've ever seen dolphins. I've never seen them that far north. I think previously the furthest north I had ever seen them was right around Herring Bay. So this was, another, 20, 30 miles north. Very interesting. After spending one night in Deep Creek, we got up early the next morning to start the long trek up to Bohemia River. That would be our final staging point before heading through the C&D Canal and making it back to Delaware City, thus ending another successful journey to Florida and back. But as we were leaving Deep Creek, there was the sun was very low, and there was a little bit of smoke. There were Canadian wildfires at the time that were sending smoke down our way over here on the East Coast, and it wasn't as bad as it was in previous years, but you could tell the atmosphere was a little hazy, and that afforded us a very unique opportunity. The sun was very low as it came up across the horizon, and it was just massive. Now, it doesn't look so massive in the videos, but I actually got out the camera and took some photos of it, and the photos turned out like crap, but I'm going to insert one here. Just because you could actually see sunspots on the surface of the sun. The atmospheric lensing was so strong at that point, just as it was coming across the horizon, which was really neat. I'd never seen that before, so I thought it was pretty cool. One other really neat thing about this area is at the entrance of the Magothie River, which is just north of the Bainbridge, is the Baltimore Light. And that is a lighthouse. It's a caisson. I think that's how you pronounce it, lighthouse. So it's got a base that goes down into the sediment below. And it is a very unique lighthouse. It's the only American lighthouse that has ever been nuclear powered. So in 1964, the Baltimore Light became the recipient of an experimental radioisotope thermoelectric generator. And it was basically one solid thing. It had no moving parts. It's a decaying radioisotope that's got thermocouples on the outside of it, so they convert heat that the radioisotopes generate directly into electricity. And this became really, really important later on during Voyager 1 and 2. So they tested that at the lighthouse. They took it out a year later. It was just a one-year test to see if a radioisotope thermoelectric generator would be stable, and they were. So radioisotope thermoelectric generators were later used in the Voyager 1 and 2 probes. So Voyager 1 was launched 48-ish years ago. Both of them were. Voyager 2 was launched about a month before Voyager 1. And they explored our solar system. Legendary. I mean, you get a little choked up. Some of the greatest science undertakings that humans have ever done, Voyager 1 and 2, just absolutely phenomenal. But due to the RTGs, they are actually they're both now in interstellar space, and they are both still functional and returning data to us. Just to give you an idea, the distance from Earth right now, Voyager 1 is 15.5 billion miles away from Earth, which is 167 astronomical units. Voyager 2 isn't quite as far, it's 12.9 billion miles away, getting my B's and T's mixed up, which is 139 astronomical units. Voyager 1 is traveling at 38,000 miles per hour. Voyager 2 is traveling at 34.3 thousand miles per hour. And Voyager 1, which is the furthest one away, it's almost one full light day away from the Earth, and we're still getting data, which is absolutely amazing. You know, you gotta hand it to the guys back in the day with their slide rules and their pocket protectors. Those men and women did some absolutely phenomenal things to calculate all those trajectories and all the different planets and moons that they visited before exiting into interstellar space, and they built that thing so robustly that it's still operating today. I mean, it brings a tear to the eye. As we got into the upper bay, it narrows down quite a bit, and you know, Chesapeake Bay is pretty wide throughout it, and it really narrows down once you get up towards the north part. And that is where we ran into a slight problem. You know, at night before we go to bed, I like to have a cocktail, and I've got a little, like bourbon barrel. It's kind of like a Yeti thing. It's got a snap lid on it, you know, and I put my bourbon in there, and I'll have a drink before I go to bed. Well, that night before I went, that night before I went to bed, I didn't click the lid closed, so it wasn't watertight, and normally that would be no big deal. But as we got, you know, I always have it sitting right at the captain's table. That's where I like to wind down at night. I'll watch some YouTube videos, or I'll watch a movie or something, and I'll have a cocktail, and life is good. And then we'll go to bed, and yeah, sometimes I forget to click that lid closed, which, like I said, normally is not a big deal. But a large boat went by at full speed and rocked us pretty good. Now, that's normally not an issue at all. You don't expect people to slow down up there, and nor should they, you know. It's not an area where they need to be too courteous of other people. Not that it's an incourtesy for them to go by at speed. Now, did I get all the disclaimers out of the way? Like, it was not an issue. They did go by a little closer than maybe they had to, but but it was my fault. So the big boat went by, we got rocked, and my jug of bourbon, it was still half full, and it tipped over directly into my laptop. And electronics don't really like bourbon that much. Certainly not as much as I do. So when I got downstairs, I saw the mess that was made, and it was about 6 ounces of bourbon that got inside of my laptop, and I picked it up, and bourbon came pouring out of it. Now, normally I would have let it dry, which the smart thing would be to do, so I actually picked it up, I drained all of it out, and I opened it up because I wanted to set it on its side to let all of the bourbon drain, and yeah, this computer automatically turns on when you open the lid, even though it was unplugged. So it turned on, it lasted about 3 seconds, and then there was a little fizz and a poof, and there went the computer, so no more computer. Now, I did take the computer apart. I was looking for a hard drive. I thought, well, if I can salvage the hard drive, if it didn't get ruined, I can maybe get some of the data off. And I had not opened a modern computer before. I could not find the hard drive anywhere. I'm thinking magnetic data storage, very small, like maybe that big I was expecting to find, a little thin thing. That is not the case. And it should have dawned on me sooner, especially if you look at memory cards nowadays. So what I ended up doing was getting this thing here, which is an external, you can get a housing for hard drives. So this is actually the hard drive right here from the laptop, and I don't think I can take it out of here, but this tiny little chip right there is a 1 terabyte hard drive from a laptop. And it should have occurred to me earlier that they're that small, but it didn't. So I actually had to Google where in the hell is a hard drive on a computer, a modern computer, and that's where it is. Now, this external housing I just got on Amazon. It was like, I don't know, $10 or something, and I was hoping to recover the data off of here, and it's not quite as simple as just plugging this in because this has an operating system on it. So I had to go to the Microsoft website and get like this 120 digit code that unlocked the hard drive, and that worked. So I was able to recover all the videos and photos. That's what you've been seeing today. So if you ever destroy a laptop, you can get your data back. So don't throw it away, get that hard drive out of there. And there are ways to recover it.
These hands of mine have got some stories to tell. Seen parts of heaven and a whole lot of hell. Headed west to stake a claim in the ground. I got as far as Cripple Creek that night. I met a girl with golden hair and green eyes. Fell in love on the outskirts of town. Hung my hat, figured I'd stick around. Hey, the part of me that longs to hold her at night would bury any man that don't treat her right. I'm gonna love and live and kill and fight with my whole heart till death do us part. There was a man who ran that whole damn town. He thought he owned her and that they'd settle down. Took her back with a Colt 44. I loaded up and rode out into the night. Took out his men and by the dawn's early light left a blood trail up to his porch. Held my breath and I kicked down the door. Down on his knees, he was begging for his life. She looked up at me without a tear in her eye. So I put that gun in her hand. Sometimes it takes a woman to end a man. The same part of me that holds her at night would bury any man that don't treat her right. I'm gonna love and live and kill and fight with my whole heart till death do us part.
I absolutely love the northern Chesapeake Bay area. It is just stunningly beautiful. The photos don't do it any justice. You know, once you get about Sassafras River going north, it's just, there are rolling hills, green pastures, there are horse barns, there are just acres and acres of fields that are fenced in for the horses to run. In a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me of Kentucky, although I've only been there once or twice, so I could be way off on that, but it's just a stunningly beautiful area, and I hope some of you get to go through it by boat sometime. But as we made our way through the C&D Canal, I could see something coming on AIS, and it looked kind of large. And I had never encountered a tanker or a cargo ship or anything like that in the C&D Canal, so I just waited for them to catch up. When we got to the end of the C&D Canal, we took our obligatory pics of the Hope Creek Generating Station, which is a nuclear power plant in New Jersey. And then we made our way up to the canal, which is the entrance to the Delaware City Marina. And it's just a short trip. I think we only have to go up the Delaware River like a mile to get there. But a couple of people passed us in that in that time, you know, us being the slowest moving boat. So we did have to wait outside of Delaware, the entrance to the canal in the Delaware River, for about 20 minutes while they handled those two first boats, and then we went in. It's a very narrow canal to get into the marina, and you don't want to have a log jam there, that's for darn sure. So I was more than happy to wait, and I pulled into the marina, and it was the easiest docking that I've ever had in my life, which I never thought I would say at Delaware City. Maybe I'm just getting better at maneuvering. I'd like to think that, but you know, there was a huge stretch of dock there, so any imbecile could have could have docked there, so they made it easy for me, which I appreciated. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I wouldn't make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, Matthew Spotton, Peter Allen, and Natalie Linehan. Thank you guys so very much. Your support really means the world to me. I do have one legacy patron member, and her name is Joan Linbow. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We really miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to our Patreon page where you can sign up. And there are hundreds, literally hundreds of extra videos and photos of our travels, and I try and keep everything there up to date and post at least once or twice a week, so it gives you a little peek behind the curtain. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That'll help us out more than you'll ever know, and that actually doesn't cost you anything, so hit that like button. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.